The Galactic Endurance Testing Institute had survived 3 centuries of impossible species. It did not survive a single human woman deciding she wasn't done yet. The Galactic Endurance Testing Institute had been operational for 372 standard cycles, and not once, not even a single time, had anyone managed to break the measurement system. The equipment was built by the Thaxians, who prided themselves on over-engineering literally everything. Their coffee makers could survive atmospheric re-entry. Their bathroom scales could weigh a collapsing star. So naturally, their endurance testing equipment was designed to measure beings that could run for days, swim through lava, or hold their breath for 6 months straight. Yeah, about that. Professor Velncourt stood in the observation deck, all 4 of his arms crossed in what he believed was an intimidating display of scientific authority. His violet skin had that particular shade of smugness that only came from decades of peer-reviewed publications and 0 professional embarrassments. He gazed down at the testing floor with the confidence of someone who had absolutely no idea what was about to happen to his career, his reputation, and his very expensive equipment. "Researcher Plix," he said, his voice carrying that annoying tone of absolute certainty, "please confirm all systems are calibrated to maximum capacity." Plex, a smaller Quilnari with nervous energy radiating from her crystalline exoskeleton, tapped at her datapad with 6 of her 8 limbs. "Yes, Professor. All systems are green. The biometric scanners are online. The endurance treadmills are set to level 73, which, as you know, is approximately 15 times what killed that Rexian champion last cycle." "Excellent," Veln replied, nodding sagely. "And our subject? 1 human female. Kira Denholm, age 28 standard years, height 1.7 meters, mass 63 kilograms. Plix hesitated, her mandibles clicking nervously. "Professor, those measurements seem, well, rather unimpressive for an endurance trial." Veln waved one arm dismissively. "The humans requested this evaluation themselves, Plix. They claim their species possesses, and I quote, extraordinary cardiovascular capacity." "We shall see. We shall certainly see." Down on the testing floor, Kira Denholm stretched her arms above her head, yawned like she had just woken up from a nap, and looked around the facility with the kind of casual interest one might give to a moderately clean public restroom. She was wearing what humans called athletic clothing, bright blue synthetic fabric that looked entirely inadequate for serious physical activity. Her brown hair was pulled back in what her species called a ponytail. She wore strange cushioned foot coverings, called running shoes. She looked, to put it bluntly, completely ordinary. Vel smiled. This was going to be easy. Simple. Another species tested, another data set completed, another publication for his already impressive resume. Oh, you beautiful, naive fool. The whole mess started 6 months prior, when humanity submitted their application for Galactic Council membership. Standard procedure. Really, every species had to go through the evaluation process. Intelligence testing, cultural assessment, technological review, and, of course, physical capability measurements. The Council needed to know what each species could contribute. Were they strong, fast, durable? Could they survive in hostile environments? Or were they the galactic equivalent of a decorative houseplant? Humans had passed the intelligence tests with flying colors, which surprised approximately nobody. They had decent technology, functional governments, or something resembling governments anyway, and their cultural assessment had been, quote, concerningly creative, but acceptable. But the physical tests? Oh, that was where things got interesting. See, humans did not look impressive. At all. They were bipedal, sure, but so were 70% of spacefaring species. They had no natural armor plating like the Drevaxians, no redundant organ systems like the Korthax, no ability to hibernate for years like the Solnites. They could not breathe underwater. They could not survive vacuum exposure even for a few seconds. Their bones broke relatively easily. Their skin was laughably thin. One decent poison and they were done. The preliminary reports labeled them as fragile generalists with moderate combat potential and adequate problem-solving skills. Professor Velncourt had read those reports with the kind of satisfaction that came from confirming his pre-existing biases. He had been studying xenophysiology for 43 cycles, and he absolutely knew that humans would score somewhere in the lower middle range, possibly below the Yintar, who were essentially sentient moss colonies, definitely below the Vrexians, who could bench press small vehicles. What Veln did not know What none of them knew was that humans had one particular trait that did not show up on standard biological scans, one absolutely ridiculous evolutionary advantage that made zero sense from a design perspective, but was somehow terrifyingly effective. But we will get to that. The betting pool had started innocently enough. Researcher Plix had suggested it during a break room conversation, and within hours, 47 staff members had contributed credits. The wagers ranged from humans will score average to humans will fail spectacularly and possibly injure themselves. Administrator Crone, a massive Dravexian whose shell plating made him look like a walking tank, had bet 50 credits that the human would quit within the first hour. "They are soft skins," Crone had rumbled, his voice like grinding continental plates. "No exoskeleton, no subdermal armor. I have seen their medical documentaries. They complain about minor temperature changes. They require 8 hours of unconsciousness daily just to function. They are not built for endurance trials." Veln had agreed wholeheartedly and matched Crone's bet. Looking back, and this is important, every single person in that betting pool was wrong. Not just slightly wrong. Not oops, miscalculated by 10% wrong. Catastrophically, equipment-destroyingly, career-questioningly wrong. But again, we will get to that. For now, Kira Denholm stood on the testing floor, rolled her shoulders twice, and said something that should have been a warning sign. "So, when do we actually start?" The first test was simple. Laughably simple, really. A basic cardiovascular assessment on the endurance treadmill. The machine would gradually increase speed and incline until the subject reached exhaustion, at which point their biometric readings would flatline into the "please stop before you die" zone, and the test would conclude. Standard procedure. The Galactic Institute had run this exact test thousands of times. The equipment was foolproof. "Subject in home," Vel announced through the communication system, his voice echoing across the testing floor with unnecessary dramatic flair. "Please step onto the treadmill. The test will begin at level 1 and increase progressively. You may stop at any time by pressing the red emergency button. Do you understand?" Kira gave a thumbs up, which was apparently a human gesture, meaning yes, or possibly "I acknowledge your existence," or maybe "I am about to ruin your entire day." The gesture was unclear. Human nonverbal communication was weird. She stepped onto the treadmill. The machine hummed to life. Level 1 was essentially a casual walk, the kind of pace you would use while window shopping or fleeing from a mild social inconvenience. For the first 3 minutes, everything appeared normal. Kira's heart rate settled at a steady 68 beats per minute. Her breathing was calm. Her body temperature remained stable. "See?" Veln said, gesturing at the readouts with smug satisfaction. "Completely average. The human physiology is performing exactly as predicted." Level 5 arrived. This was a brisk jog, the pace where most species started showing elevated stress markers. The Quilnari usually began struggling here. The Yintar would have already quit and gone to find a nice damp rock to regenerate on. Kira's heart rate increased to 90 beats per minute. Her breathing deepened slightly. She looked, and this was the first warning sign, completely unbothered. Not trying to appear calm, unbothered. Actually genuinely unbothered. She was looking around the facility like a tourist checking out architecture. "Interesting," Plix murmured, her crystalline fingers tapping nervously on her datapad. "Her cooling system is remarkably efficient. Look at the thermal distribution." Veln glanced at the thermal imaging display. The human was sweating, which was weird and kind of gross, but the temperature regulation was admittedly impressive. The moisture was evaporating off her skin and creating a localized cooling effect. Clever, in a disgusting biological sort of way. Level 10 hit. This was a full sprint for most bipedal species. This was where the Dravaxian warrior caste started breathing hard. This was where things got serious. Kira's heart rate climbed to 130 beats per minute. Her breathing increased. She was definitely working now, definitely exerting effort. And then she started humming. Humming. Some kind of repetitive human musical pattern that sounded vaguely aggressive and entirely out of place in a scientific testing facility. Is she singing?" Plix asked, her voice climbing half an octave into confused territory. "Ignore it," Veln said, though his confidence was developing tiny microscopic cracks. "Humans often make noise during physical exertion. It is a psychological coping mechanism." Level 15. The treadmill was moving at a pace that would have hospitalized a Quilnari and annoyed a Dravaxian. The incline had increased to simulate running uphill, which was just cruel, frankly. The biometric sensors were expecting to see stress hormones flooding the system, muscle fatigue markers, elevated body temperature approaching dangerous levels. What they actually saw was Kira Denholm maintaining her pace with the kind of steady determination usually reserved for religious pilgrimages or revenge quests. "Professor," Plick said, and now there was genuine concern in her voice. "The readings are not matching the predictive models." "What do you mean?" "I mean her lactate threshold is not where it should be. Her oxygen consumption is efficient beyond normal parameters. And Professor, her heart rate is not climbing anymore. It is stabilizing." Veln stared at the readouts. That was not supposed to happen. When you pushed a biological system harder, it was supposed to struggle more, not adapt and settle into a sustainable rhythm. That was not how endurance worked. That was not how any of this worked. Down on the testing floor, Kira stopped humming long enough to call out, "Hey, is this thing going to get harder, or is this like a warm-up phase?" "A warm-up phase. A warm-up." Veln felt something cold and terrible settle in his primary stomach. Something that felt suspiciously like the early stages of professional dread. "Increase to level 20, he said quietly. "Professor, that is beyond recommended safety parameters for untested species." "Do it." The treadmill increased speed. Kira kept running, and somewhere in the facility's central computer, a tiny error log began recording anomalies that should not exist. Level 25 was where the Vrexian champion had collapsed last cycle. The same Vrexian champion who could deadlift a small shuttle and had once arm-wrestled a hydraulic press to a standstill. He had lasted 47 minutes at level 25 before his quadruple-muscled legs had given out and he had face-planted onto the treadmill with the kind of dramatic flair that only came from complete cardiovascular failure. Kira hit level 25 at the 32-minute mark and did not even blink. "This cannot be correct," Veln muttered, his violet skin now fading to a pale lavender that indicated either deep thought or the early stages of panic. "Run a full diagnostic on the biometric sensors. They must be malfunctioning." Plix's 8 limbs became a blur of activity across multiple data pads. "Diagnostics complete. All sensors are functioning within normal parameters." "Professor, the readings are accurate. She is actually doing this, but her muscle mass is insufficient. Her cardiovascular system should be failing. Where is she getting the energy? Where is the oxygen debt?" On the testing floor, Kira was still running. Her form had not deteriorated. Her breathing, while heavy, was controlled and rhythmic. Sweat was pouring off her in amounts that would have dehydrated most species into jerky, but her body temperature was holding steady at 37.2 degrees Celsius. The cooling system was working flawlessly. Administrator Crone lumbered into the observation deck, his shell plating clanking with each step. "I heard alarms. What is happening? Did the human quit already?" "No," Veln said then. His voice had taken on a slightly strangled quality. "No, the human has not quit. The human is currently operating at endurance levels that should not be possible for her body mass and muscle composition." Crone's optical sensors focused on the displays. His massive frame went very, very still. "That is level 25. "Yes." The Vrexian collapsed at level 25. "Yes." "How long has she been running?" 41 minutes. Crone made a sound like grinding gravel. "I would like to change my bet." "Too late," Plix said, not looking up from her frantically scrolling data. "Betting pool closed when testing began. You are locked in." Administrator. Level 30 arrived with a mechanical whine that sounded vaguely concerned. The treadmill was now moving at a pace that the manufacturers had labeled theoretical maximum for carbon-based bipeds. The incline was set to 18%, simulating a mountain climb. The environmental controls had increased gravity by 15%, just to add extra resistance. Kira's response was to adjust her stride slightly and keep going. "Professor," Blix said, and now her voice had gone up 2 full octaves into the range that Quilnari reserved for existential crises. "The comparative performance database is showing something alarming." "Define alarming." "She has now exceeded the endurance scores of 63% of tested species, including species that are classified as endurance specialists, including the Marathax, who can run for 72 hours straight, including the persistence hunters of Krella 7th, who literally evolved to chase prey until the prey died of exhaustion." Veln felt his secondary heart skip a beat. That is not possible. And yet, on the testing floor, Kira called out between breaths. Hey, quick question. Is this as hard as it gets? Because I have done worse Tuesday morning jogs. A Tuesday morning jog. She had done worse. On a Tuesday, in the morning, casually, presumably before consuming breakfast and performing whatever other mundane activities humans did. Increased to level 35, Veln said, his voice hollow. Professor, we have never tested level 35 on a biological organism. That setting exists purely for stress testing the machine itself. I am aware. Increased to level 35. The treadmill made a sound like a mechanical scream. Several warning lights began flashing. The speed increased to something that looked less like running and more like a barely controlled biological missile. The incline hit 25%. The gravity increased to 1.3 standard. Kira stumbled. For exactly 2 seconds she stumbled, her rhythm breaking. Vel leaned forward. There. That is her limit. She is going to quit. She has to quit. Kira caught herself, reset her stride, and then, somehow, impossibly, her pace stabilized again. Her jaw was clenched. Her eyes had taken on the kind of focused intensity usually associated with apex predators or religious zealots. Sweat was flying off her in droplets that evaporated mid-air from the sheer heat she was generating. Nope, she said between breaths. Nope, 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 not quitting. Not today. That was when the first piece of equipment failed. The primary biometric sensor made a sad beeping noise and then displayed a simple message. Error measurements exceed maximum calibrated values. Then the secondary sensor failed. Then the tertiary backup. Then the thermal imaging system crashed and rebooted itself twice before giving up entirely and displaying a skull emoji, which was frankly unprofessional programming from the Thaxian engineers. What is happening? Crone demanded. The equipment, Veln whispered, watching his entire career implode in real time, is not designed to measure this. We built it for theoretical maximums. We never considered that something this small could perform at these levels. Down on the testing floor, Kira kept running, and running, and running, and the machines kept breaking. Researcher Plix, to her credit, was the first one to actually think instead of just stare in mounting horror at the cascading equipment failures. Her crystalline fingers flew across her datapad, pulling up the human biological database, cross-referencing evolutionary records, scanning through anthropological studies that had been filed under interesting but probably irrelevant. Professor, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos of alarms and warning beeps. Professor, I think I found something. You are not going to like it. I already do not like any of this, Veln replied, watching another monitoring system give up and display a white flag icon. What is it? The humans evolved as persistence hunters. Silence. Complete, total silence in the observation deck. Even the alarms seemed to pause out of respect for that statement. Explain, Crone rumbled. Lex pulled up a holographic display showing ancient Earth back when humans were still developing into their current form. 2 million years ago, humans were not apex predators. They were not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most dangerous. They had no claws, no venom, no armor, no natural weapons at all. They were, by all standard metrics, prey animals that should have gone extinct. Then how did they survive? Velan asked, though part of him was starting to suspect the answer, and he really did not like it. They ran. Plix zoomed in on a primitive human chasing an antelope-like creature across a savanna. They ran after prey, for hours, for days, if necessary. They did not need to be faster, they just needed to keep going. Their prey would sprint away, hide, rest, and the humans would just keep coming. Slowly, steadily, relentlessly, following footprints, tracking scents, never stopping, never giving up, until the prey animal's body overheated, until its muscles failed, until it literally collapsed from exhaustion and died. That is horrifying, Crone said quietly. That is effective, Blix corrected. Look at their cooling system. Every other species in the galaxy cools down by panting, by seeking shade, by slowing down. Humans sweat. They have over 2 million sweat glands covering their entire body. They can run in heat that would kill most species. They can maintain activity while cooling themselves in real time. It is actually brilliant engineering. Veln stared at the data. But their muscles, their legs, they do not have enough raw power. They do not need raw power, Professor. Look at their skeletal structure. That is not built for sprinting. That is built for efficiency. Their leg tendons act like springs, storing and releasing energy with every step. Their posture keeps their center of mass over their feet, minimizing wasted effort. And their breathing. Oh, their breathing is not connected to their stride like quadrupeds. They can adjust their respiratory rate independently, optimizing oxygen intake. They are not built for speed. They are built to just keep going forever. On the testing floor, Kira was now at 47 minutes and counting. Level 35. Gravity at 1.3 standard. The treadmill was smoking slightly, which was probably not ideal. There is more, Plix continued, scrolling through mental and psychological profiles. Human endurance is not just physical. They have this psychological trait. When their body tells them to stop, when every logical survival instinct says quit, they can just decide not to. They call it stubbornness, or determination, or spite. Spite? Velm repeated weakly. Yes. Humans will continue doing something purely because someone or something told them they could not. It makes no evolutionary sense. It should have killed them off. Instead, it made them the dominant species on their planet. Administrator Crone pulled up the comparative performance files, his massive claws scrolling through species after species. The Rexian champion lasted 47 minutes at level 25. She has been at level 35 for 9 minutes now. The Krell persistence hunters average 60 minutes at level 20 before failure. The Marathax hold the galactic record at 93 minutes, level 22. What is the human doing now? Veln asked, afraid of the answer. 51 minutes. Still going. Heart rate has actually decreased slightly. I think she found a sustainable pace. At level 35. At 1.3 gravity. I think she could maintain this for hours. Vel's worldview was crumbling. 43 cycles of study. Hundreds of publications. An entire career built on understanding the limits of biological endurance. And this small, soft, unarmored human was casually demolishing everything he thought he knew. There is one more thing, Plix added almost apologetically. According to the Human Medical Database, this particular subject consumed something called coffee before the test. It is a mild stimulant that humans use to, and I am quoting here, function like normal people. A stimulant. Barely, it is legal. Widely available. Humans consume it daily. Often multiple times daily. They are essentially a species that chemically enhances their already ridiculous endurance just to handle their everyday activities. Crone made the Drevaxian equivalent of a laugh, which sounded like rocks tumbling down a mountain. We tested the wrong thing. We should have been measuring their stopping point, whether they have one, whether they even understand the concept. Down on the testing floor, Kira was still running. Her face was red. Her breathing was heavy. Every muscle in her body should have been screaming for mercy, and yet she kept going. Step after step after step after step, not because she had to, not because it was easy, because she could, because someone had given her a course to run and a finish line to cross, because quitting was simply not something her evolution had programmed into her as an acceptable option. Velm watched the timer tick past 55 minutes and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Pure, absolute scientific humility and terror. Definitely terror. At the 62-minute mark, the treadmill made a grinding noise that sounded distinctly like mechanical sobbing and then simply stopped. Not because Kira had quit, not because she had reached failure, but because the machine itself had given up. The belt had worn down to the point where safety protocols forced an automatic shutdown. The equipment, designed and built by the Thaxians who over-engineered literally everything, had been defeated by a single human running on it for slightly over an hour. Kira stumbled off the treadmill, breathing hard but still upright, still conscious, still capable of forming coherent sentences. Is it broken? Did I break it? Vel's response came out as a strangled wheeze. Yes, you broke it. You broke the unbreakable endurance treadmill. Oh. Kira looked genuinely apologetic. Sorry about that. Do you have another test, or is that it? Another test. She wanted another test. After 62 minutes at levels that should have liquefied her internal organs, after breaking equipment that had survived 3 centuries of testing, she wanted more. Something snapped in Velen's mind. Not in a bad way necessarily. More like the snap of a scientist realizing that the universe was far more interesting and terrifying than he had previously believed. Yes. Yes, we have another test. Plix, activate the marathon course. Professor, That is not a standard test. That is the theoretical maximum challenge. We have never, not once, had anyone complete it. The Marathax got closest at 42 kilometers before catastrophic muscle failure activated. The marathon course was less a test and more a dare to the universe. 42.195 kilometers. Varied terrain simulation. Random incline changes. Environmental variables. The Galactic Institute had designed it as the ultimate endurance challenge, something that would remain unbeaten forever. A monument to the absolute limits of biological performance. It had sat unused for 3 cycles because everyone agreed it was essentially impossible. Kira stretched her calves, drank something called water with electrolytes, which sounded made up, and said, "All right, let us do this." The course activated. Kira started running. Again. Still. Continuously. Like some kind of horrifying perpetual motion machine made of flesh and determination. 10 kilometers in, the holographic terrain projectors started glitching. The system was not designed to run this long continuously. 20 kilometers in, researcher Plix collapsed in her chair, her crystalline exoskeleton dimming from sympathetic exhaustion just from watching. I cannot keep observing this. It is too much. She should be dead. Why is she not dead? 30 kilometers in, 3 different monitoring systems maxed out their measurement scales and displayed messages ranging from error, subject exceeds biological parameters, to please make it stop, to I quit, I am just a program, I did not sign up for this. Administrator Crone had stopped watching entirely and was just sitting in the corner, staring at nothing, his entire understanding of physical limitations shattered into tiny pieces. I have trained Drevaxian warriors for 30 cycles. I have seen soldiers carry twice their body weight for 20 kilometers and collapse proud. She is still going. She is still going. 40 kilometers in, Kira's pace had slowed, but not by much. Her form was still good. Her breathing was labored but controlled. Sweat was creating small puddles on the course. Her legs should have been jelly. Her heart should have exploded. Her lungs should have filed a formal complaint with her brain and gone on strike. Instead, she kept running. 42.195 kilometers. The finish line, the theoretical maximum. The impossible distance that no species in galactic history had ever completed under testing conditions. Kira crossed it. Stopped. Bent over with her hands on her knees for approximately 30 seconds. Then straightened up and called out, "Hey, that was great. Really good workout. Quick question though, what time is lunch? Because I am absolutely starving. Do you guys have food here or should I have brought my own? Also, is there water? I should probably hydrate. Lunch." She was asking about lunch. After running a marathon, after breaking every piece of equipment, after destroying the galactic endurance record by existing, Vel could not speak. Words had lost meaning. Language was insufficient. He simply pointed vaguely toward the facility cafeteria. Later, much later, after Kira had consumed an alarming amount of food, enough to feed a small Quilnari colony, according to Plix, the staff gathered to settle the betting pool. Administrator Crone accessed the results with the weary resignation of someone who knew exactly what he was about to see. The betting pool has been calculated. The human was predicted to score between levels 8 and 18. She completed level 35 and ran a full marathon. Therefore, every single person who placed a bet was incorrect. All credits will be refunded. Nobody won. Everyone lost. Except the human, Plix added quietly. Yes, Crone agreed, his voice hollow. Except the human. Veln stared at the destroyed equipment, the maxed-out readouts, the error logs that would take weeks to sort through, and he realized something profound and uncomfortable. Humans were not fragile generalists. Humans were endurance apex predators wrapped in deceptively soft packaging. They were biological horror shows that evolution had designed specifically to never, ever stop, and Earth had 8 billion of them. The Galactic Council emergency session convened exactly 48 hours after what was now being called the Denholm incident in official reports and the day the machines gave up in unofficial conversations. Representatives from 17 species filled the chamber, all of them looking at the data with expressions ranging from disbelief to existential concern. Councillor Thex, a dignified Cortaxian with ceremonial head ridges that indicated extreme age and wisdom, spoke first. Let me ensure I understand correctly. A single human female, weighing 63 kilograms, broke our endurance testing equipment. Equipment designed to measure theoretical maximums. Equipment that has successfully tested species 3 times her size with 4 times her muscle mass. That is correct, Velln confirmed, standing at the podium with the shell-shocked demeanor of someone whose entire career had been reorganized against his will. And she asked for lunch afterwards. Also correct. And this is typical for the species. Velln pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's athletic records, marathon times, ultramarathon distances, something called an Ironman triathlon that sounded like a torture method but was apparently a recreational activity. According to human databases, Subject Denholm is, and I am quoting here, reasonably fit but not exceptional. She is not an elite athlete. She is not genetically modified. She is by human standards average. The chamber erupted. 17 different species, all expressing shock in 17 different ways, creating a symphony of galactic disbelief. Order! Counselor Thex's voice cut through the chaos. What is your recommendation, Professor Velln? Velln took a breath. The human species requires complete reclassification. They are not fragile generalists. They are endurance apex predators. Their physical classification should be elevated to Class 7, possibly Class 8 pending further testing. Their psychological profile should include warnings about persistence, stubbornness, and what they call spite-based motivation. And this is a personal recommendation, but nobody should ever arm wrestle a human, or challenge them to any endurance competition, or tell them something is impossible. That last one seems to activate some kind of genetic override that makes them completely unstoppable. Counselor Thex nodded slowly. Noted. And the human subject, Kira Denholm, has been offered a position with Galactic Athletics. They want her to compete in the interspecies marathon. She accepted enthusiastically. The equipment manufacturers are understandably terrified. Understandably, Thex agreed. The motion passed unanimously. Humans were reclassified. New equipment was ordered with expanded measurement scales. The testing protocols were completely rewritten to include categories like may continue indefinitely and will probably break something. Kira Denholm went on to win the interspecies marathon by 4 hours. She broke 7 records, destroyed 2 timing systems, and caused 3 different species to retire from competitive athletics entirely out of sheer demoralization. When asked about her victory, she said it was pretty fun and that she might try an ultramarathon next. Professor Velln took a 6-month sabbatical to emotionally recover and write a completely new textbook titled Endurance Physiology. Everything we thought we knew was wrong. Administrator Crone never bet against humans again. And researcher Plix developed a new scientific principle that was quickly accepted across the galaxy. Never tell a human something cannot be done. They will take it personally, they will prove you wrong, and they will break your equipment while doing it. Humans. Persistence hunters. Endurance monsters. The species that evolution designed to just keep going, forever, until the universe itself got tired and quit first. Welcome to the Galactic Council, humanity. Please try not to break everything. Though, let us be honest, you absolutely will.